to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome back, everybody. Billy and Bradley here with Fantasy Data, and we are joined tonight by none less than Josh Larky, Director of Analytics at Player Profiler. We've become pretty good friends this last season after our little Cam Akers debate online. Made sure to keep in touch because we want to bring that back up next year. It's already starting. But Larky, I want to say thank you for joining us last minute here on the pod, and it's very nice to have you on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I did a quick little glance at the show sheet, which means we're ready to get started. So yeah, happy to be here. Got about 30 minutes. We can just pump out some takes right now. I know this is kind of an important time of the year, I've heard, for fantasy managers. Let's get right to it.
All right, Bradley, let's
do it. Yeah, running backs. All right, we've seen James Conner be a running back one, it seems, almost every week now that Chase Edmonds has been out, but Edmonds is scheduled to return on Monday Night Football. Is James Conner, can we start him with confidence as a running back one? Like I'm thinking no, but he's had such a role in the offense. Can they really integrate Chase week one back from the injury the way he was being used before?
I think that we're going to have to kind of monitor the practice reports. I think that'll be pretty telling. I mean, if Chase Edmonds is just fully practicing Thursday, Friday, yeah, I think that role should probably be there. However, I kind of expect them to ease him back in. Look at how conservative they were with Kyler and Hopkins. This is possibly the best team in football. They know they're going to the playoffs. They're probably getting the first round bye. And I think that they're really looking towards their future, and that if Edmonds is pretty limited in practice, I think there's a good chance he suits up. However, I think this is probably, if Edmonds is limited, probably Connor's final week that you can consider him maybe in the RB1 tier. I think if Edmonds is a full go, though, you're still starting James Conner. It's kind of the nature of the running back position. There's not much else. But I think that we're really just going to have to monitor those practice reports, because we've just seen that when a guy's limited, Kyler was limited a couple of those weeks and they said it was game time decision, then he didn't even play. So I think that's going to be really telling to see what Edmonds is capable of. It seems like he's on the early end of his high ankle sprain recovery timeline too. I believe it's 4 weeks in. So I don't know. If I had to choose, I would say 30% snap share for Edmonds, Conner low end RB1. If I had to give the firm take.
I always say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And they're winning games with him on the field. He was already the goal line back when Edmonds was on the field. There's no reason to rush him back. I agree with you, Larky, with them winning. And you look at what Connor's done over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, they had the bye, so let's just scratch that week. But week 11, he was running back number 8 in half-point PPR. Last week, he was running back 10 in half-point PPR. He's been a pretty steady running back 1 with Edmonds out. I don't think that game script is going to change much with Edmonds in. Maybe it more as a change of pace and third down back. But I would agree. I think we're going to see a lot of Conner. I'm going to say I probably agree with that snap share. Just there's no reason to rush Edmonds back in when you have playoff admirations as well as Super Bowl admirations. So I totally agree with you here. I think James Conner remains a must-start RB1.
Okay, but are you starting Chase Edmonds? Like at a 30% snap, let's say that Larky's firm take is 30%. Does he crack your lineup? Is he a flex consideration with that type of usage?
Absolutely. Have you seen the lineups that people are submitting this week with Joe Mixon with his neck hurt, Dalvin Cook still hurt. You have Zeke Elliott, who's looking like he's playing, who's doing his best impression of Alex Collins. There's so many question marks at the running back position this week that you would be, I think, thrilled to have Edmonds back in some of these lineups that are being submitted. I know I'm not alone when I'm saying that I'm starting Nwangwu in a couple of FFPC championship games this week, just because that's how decimated these teams are with injuries and buys. It happens. This is the latest we've seen bye weeks in NFL history, week 14. And here we are. So I think that, yes, I am happy to have Edmonds back in a couple leagues, and I'm going to be inserting him in some championship lineups.
All right, Larky, are you going to be starting Chase Edmonds?
Probably not. But it's more just that the couple leagues that I would have to consider him, I have strong running backs in those leagues, but I really think it's like what Billy said. I mean, it's just kind of dependent on what you have with how many injuries there are. That's why even if Edmonds is playing, I still think Edmonds cutting in a little bit to the work. Connor's still a low-end RB1. I would say Edmonds, there's maybe 30, 35 running backs that I'll probably want to start over him this week. I think the other little wrinkle in it is that he does play Monday night. So if there's just no clarity to that situation, I'll probably start someone else, just knowing that Edmonds doesn't really have that much of a ceiling this week. I don't think so. If you have someone else that you think, oh, this guy's going to get me 4 or 5 fantasy points, I think you just roll with that if there's no clarity. But yeah, I don't think if you're desperate, I think he's probably going to get you 4 to 7 fantasy points minimum, just because his role is built, especially with PPR. It is built for PPR. He's a very high targets per route run kind of guy. He's going to be out there. And if he's out on the field and healthy enough, he's probably going to get peppered with some targets.
That's like 4 to 7 more points than you're going to get from DJ Jallis or maybe Rashad Penny or any of those other backs that people are contemplating starting this week.
I had to desperation start Mike Boone in a couple leagues last week, so talk to me. All right, but okay, so Chase Edmonds or Amir Abdullah. For the Carolina Panthers, we've seen Amir Abdullah step into this third down back, PPR roll back. Chuba Hubbard, we presume, is going to be the one first and second down in place of Christian McCaffrey. And we've seen the Panthers utilize the running back. Whoever's on the field, they're going to pass the ball to the running back. Is Amir Abdullah more of a flex consideration maybe than Chase Edmonds this week?
I think they're going to be pretty close in ranking. I'll probably have Edmonds higher, but I would not be surprised to see Amir Abdullah out snap Edmonds as well as out target him. Even when Christian McCaffrey was on the field, Abdullah was seeing some of that third down work, which was crazy to me, but it was happening. And then, Chuba Hubbard, before McCaffrey came back from injury, was dipping into that third down role as well. So I would expect to see a continuance of third down work for Amir Abdullah. Would not be surprised to see him sprinkled in on 1s and 2s as well. So I think Amir Abdullah will probably have a larger snap share than Chase Edmonds for week 14. But Edmonds is just so explosive, and that offense is so much more potent that it kind of gives me the nod and tip of the hat to Edmonds' side.
Yeah, I think I would probably go Abdullah over Edmonds for a couple of reasons. One, I think Abdullah is definitely going to get a higher percentage of the snaps. And also, if we just look at this Panthers receiving core, I don't think they really like what they have, which is weird with how much money and investment they have in it. I mean, we have DJ Moore, rock solid role. Robbie Anderson's been a disappointment. They healthy scratch Terrace Marshall before the bye, which makes me think they're just not really loving any of their wide receiver 3 options. If their second round pick can't see the field because of special teams depth, and who is it? Brandon Zylstra? Or am I thinking? Yeah, there's 2 Zylstras in the NFL. I can't remember if Brandon is the receiver or the other one. But I think Abdullah is going to have kind of a healthy role. It seems like they sort of tried out Chuba Hubbard in that bell cow role and thought, no, we don't really like what we see here. This is a between the tackles grinder. So I think Abdullah is just kind of a safer floor and probably the higher ceiling too, just because he's going to see more work. It's also the Falcons defense, which is just such a dreadful defense. I mean, we saw how Fournette was just peppered. That's been kind of the story of a lot of these games where the running backs are doing pretty heavy damage on the ground through the air against the Falcons. So I don't think it's like I'm not saying Abdullah is going to get you 15, 20 fantasy points, but I think he's probably a lock for kind of that 8 to 12 range just based on usage in this one. So that's why I would lean Abdullah over Edmonds.
And Falcons are giving up the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't count like that fast. So seventh most fantasy points to the running back position on the season 2 PPR scoring formats. So good good take there, Larky. Yeah, I think it's pretty darn close in this one. And like I said, I agree. I think that Abdullah will see more snaps.
With offensive coordinator Joe Brady being fired this past week in light of Christian McCaffrey, I think it's his first game not getting a reception. Does that mean that there's going to be a change here in offensive play calling for the Carolina Panthers? Does that mean they're going to be running the ball more? Or are we going to see some sort of different play? Or are we just going to continue to see the amount of passing that we have over the last few weeks before the bye?
So I don't have too much nuance here. This isn't my area of expertise. I generally don't try and speculate in terms of exactly what's going to happen. They're coming off the bye. They kind of a surprise firing. I think we'd all agree. So I don't think that at this point I have any particularly insightful info where I'm like, oh, I read this or I know they're going to do this. I just think that we saw Chuba audition for the bell cow role and they said no, which is why I think that Abdullah, who saw over half the snaps in week 12, that's why I think he's going to be out on the field a whole lot. Is I don't quite know why they'd wind down his role, especially it's starting to look like a lost season. Are you really running Chuba into the ground right now when you've already learned he doesn't have this skill set? So I think Abdullah is going to he's going to be the pass catching back. He'll probably outsnap Chuba if the game script is kind of if the Falcons end up pouring on more points than expected. I think he's going to see over half the snaps. If the game goes kind of like I expect, I think he's still seeing 40% of the snaps, 4 to 7 targets. So,
okay. Moving on from the Panthers, who do you have more confidence in starting in week 14? Dontre Hilliard or Dante Foreman?
This one's so tough. I actually was just thinking about this question earlier today because I was looking at some projections that I was doing, and I think Hilliard is the high upside option because anytime you get someone who's a pass catcher where the team also, even though he's not a big guy, but the team goes, you know what? We're willing to give him double-digit carries. That's just pretty ridiculous. There's very few running backs that have that kind of role. However, I don't know what's going on with McNichols. The bye happened. At this point, he really should be recovered from his concussion from 3 or 4 weeks ago. If there was a redundant skill set, it would be Hilliard McNichols. I don't know if Hilliard did it. We've seen so many times where it's like, oh, the guy has done enough to carve out a role. Like Khalil Herbert, you go, the guy is so damn good. He has to carve out a role. And then I don't think he got a single carry this past week.
No, I paid a 2nd-round pick for a 1-week rental from Bradley in a dynasty league.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I was pretty certain if anyone carved out a role. So that's why, Hilliard's looked great, but did he carve out the role? I don't know. So I think if you want to chase pure ceiling, and it doesn't really matter if you win or lose this week, yeah, you want Hilliard on your team. Sure, fire him up, see what happens. Or if you're like a huge underdog in your matchup, but I think the safer option, who I can more confidently project this guy is going to get 12 to 15 touches, it would be Foreman. So I think it just kind of depends which profile you want to lean towards this week.
Go ahead,
See,
Riley.
over the last couple weeks, it's been Hilliard out playing, out snapping, out producing Foreman. And
that's debatable, Bradley.
I mean, you can debate it, but Hilliard has outplayed him the last 2 weeks. Now, Foreman seems like he's just been playing solid, like as Larky mentioned, probably a higher floor player, but Hilliard has shown both the pass catching capabilities. He's had multiple games, or at least one game where I think it's 2 games with a 20% target share or more. But also we've seen the dynamic play. And like as exemplified by the 68-yard touchdown that he took to the house against the Patriots defense, who really did stifle the running game of the Bills last night. But I think that Hilliard's the play until we see otherwise. That really, you mentioned like Jeremy McNichols. I think that job has now been lost because of the concussion. Like he's just been out, and like these concussions are pretty non-linear. And if he's still exhibiting symptoms and even after the bye, he's not practicing. I mean, this is worth monitoring, of course, this situation, but I think Hilliard, how can you bench him when he's played so well over the last couple of weeks? It doesn't make sense for Tennessee, who's still in the playoff hunt. They're still in the thick of it. Like they're they started so hot and now things have cooled off with all of the injuries. And you're not getting AJ Brown back. You just opened a window for Julio Jones to be activated off of IR. Anthony Firster's done nothing. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, like he's had a couple flash spots, but he's still not getting like a 25%. He's not stepped into a full AJ Brown target share, that type of role. So I think that the running back role here in the pass catching is going to be a very valuable one. And if I'm putting my money on it, it's probably Hilliard.
See, I love being devil's advocate here and having contrarian opinions on these conversations, because I look at it and yes, Hilliard has outsnapped in the last couple of weeks, but if you look back at last week prior to the bye, it was a near 50-50 split. I mean, 31 to 32 snaps, and Foreman handled 19 carries on the ground compared to 12 for Hilliard. Yes, Hilliard had the long run, which is why they continue to feed him the ball, but you just look at the film and breaking down how each player was running. And to me, Foreman was more powerful. He was just as elusive. He was running people over. He looked really good. Like, it reminded me of Foreman when he was on the Texans, like that draft pick that we all thought was going to be
the pre-Achilles injury.
Exactly. The next Arian Foster heir. Right. And I just think that, that is what we're starting to see glimpses of again here from Foreman. And if they commit to him, which it looks like they started doing towards, 3 quarters to almost the end of that game, when they started just pounding the rock with him, I think that I look at usage and I say, hey, carries are more predictable than targets. And when I look at my projections and I say, hey, this guy is getting 19 touches, like, you can project that. Whereas someone like Hilliard, who is reliant on the breakaway or reliant on the targets through the air, you have to, have a little bit of hesitation when you're plugging him in the lineup, especially when you have somebody like McNichols looking over his shoulder. You have a fumble or you have a missed block, and who's going to come into the game? It's going to be McNichols if he's healthy, right? Even if he's not, and that's if he's not starting. So for me, the answer is pretty clear. I like Dante Foreman, and I think he's a very sneaky play heading into week 14.
I think one more thing with Foreman is that he is their red zone goal line back. So week 12, there was 1 red zone carry for Hilliard. Deonta Foreman had 6. And I know that you're not always going to have 7 red zone carries for your running backs up for grabs, but I do think that indicates in some ways that, yes, this is a much bigger back. I don't think Hilliard's 200 pounds. I'm pretty sure he's sub 200. Really, really small running back.
5'11", 202.
Okay, so he hit
that's
the
with
200.
the burrito.
That's post burrito. So I think that Foreman just kind of that safer role. So we'll see what happens. I think if you told me that one of these guys at 25 fantasy points, I'd probably say, all right, I guess they just rolled with Hilliard and he had some big plays. But I think Foreman's probably who I'd lean towards. I'm starting Foreman in a couple leagues this week, though. Also, I got outbid on Hilliard, so there's that as well.
We'll move to a less appealing backfield and probably perhaps one of the grossest running back rooms in the NFL, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. The clown show is in full effect. Adrian Peterson leading the backfield. Rashad Penny also there. It's Travis Homer takes one to the house, I guess, on a fake play. Like, they're just they're throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks. And it's so sad to say about Adrian Peterson, but I think he's the goal line back, as gross as that sounds. He almost had a second touchdown in this game, but Rashad Penny's, I feel like I've been out on Rashad Penny. It's so cloudy and disgusting. I feel like I don't even want to give analysis on this Seattle backfield, because they finally started running plays. Like in the previous 4 games or so, this was like a 45 plays per game team, and you just couldn't get any offensive volume, and you were completely dependent upon efficiency. So I don't know. This feels like almost an outlier in week 13 that they're going to run 50 something plays. I don't know. I don't want any of them in my lineup.
Yeah, I don't have a strong take in terms of this. I think they're both pretty dusty options. I mean, if you really need a few fantasy points, yeah, like you said, Peterson had the kind of that goal line role. reminded me a little bit of Jordan Howard from the Dolphins days, when the guy's going to get you like more fantasy points than carries, like maybe double the fantasy points to his carries, just because he's going to punch one in. But I think that Penny's kind of, if you're looking for someone that you might actually start and get excited about it, I think it's Penny. Like, Collins hasn't really held up. He also has not looked very good at all. I don't know why they hate DJ Dallas. I kind of like DJ Dallas. Travis Homer is clearly never going to be the guy. This is like the most situational pass catcher. But I mean, Penny saw a 40% snap share. He had a few red zone carries. He ran 12 routes. So I think that there's at least potential there for, as he gets healthier, if there was going to be a role expansion, I think it's more likely Penny than Peterson. So I'll lean Penny, but I'm not confidently starting Penny.
Yeah, why this backfield isn't a 1-2 punch between Penny and DJ Dallas is beyond me. But watching film, Penny actually looked pretty explosive. As if that kid can stay healthy, like if is the big like in bold, right? He's very talented. Like, I had such high hopes for him coming out of college, and it just never amounted to anything. But some of his runs this last week looked pretty damn good. So I would lean Penny here, but I'm probably not starting either of them unless it's complete desperation.
All right, Billy, let's talk about your biggest miss of the year.
So this is probably one of my biggest misses of the year. I was completely wrong on Javonte Williams looking at his tape, and I just thought it was not going to translate to the NFL. He's a powerful runner, but how much is he going to be able to run over defenders at the NFL level? How much faster is he going to be? I just didn't think it was going to translate well. And watching this game this week, holy shit, was I wrong, right? He looked amazing. Like, he was explosive. He was powerful. He was strong. He was all over the field, like easy three down back, in my opinion. And like, I have no way, shape, or form have any comprehension of why they would even try to go back to Melvin Gordon after this outing, especially when he's nearing the end of his contract. Like, is Javonte Williams now the starter moving forward in your guys' book?
I think it's actually going to be a pretty 50-50 split. I have a slight edge with the targets, with the carries, with the snaps going to Javonte, but that's more just because it's Gordon's first game back. This was a very productive committee, and I know like everyone hates that it's a committee, but I think in terms of real football, it's probably smart just because you're minimizing the injury risk. And I mean, yes, Gordon got banged up, but also probably a 1-game absence. And I think that's really what the Broncos clearly want, at least for this year, is that this isn't a real Super Bowl contender. They're probably hoping they can land an Aaron Rodgers and be a Super Bowl contender next year. But if these games don't,
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson. Any type of real legitimate quarterback upgrade. This is a Super Bowl contending roster. I think that's when they're more likely to unleash Javonte, up the risk quotient of give this guy 25 touches a game. Yeah, he's more likely to get injured, but also these are really just must-win games. I don't really feel that from them. I mean, every single week, Javonte's looked better. And what happened? 50-50 split week after week. In fact, Melvin Gordon frequently would get 1 or 2 more carries and actually run more routes than Javonte. So if anything, you could have even said it was a 53-47 split for Melvin Gordon. So I think it's going to be kind of a 50-50 split, slight edge to Javonte, just A, what he did, but also B, Gordon coming back from injury, ease him in a little bit. But I don't think that there's any real incentive for them to completely scrap Melvin Gordon. I mean, at this point, you've already paid Gordon. He's going to walk after this year. You might as well protect your investment in Javonte, keep the timeshare going. What are they really playing for at this point? I mean, getting rid of Von Miller was them basically saying, hey, we don't think we're as good as our record. Was kind of how I interpreted that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Larky. I think it's going to be, still split 50-50. You made a lot of good points with protecting Javonte Williams. The Broncos are on the outside looking in. Right now, they have about a 20-something% chance of making the playoffs. They need to win 4 of the next 5. Granted, they need to make win 4 of the next 5 to have like an 80-something% chance of making the playoffs. But with the running back position, Javonte Williams was making a lot of his money or a lot of his fantasy points through the air. And Teddy Bridgewater going forward, and what we've seen over the last couple of years is he is the dump off king. He's almost like Alex Smith. We saw like 20-something% of his passes this past week were dump offs, and Javonte Williams was just getting the 10, 12, 8 yards down the sideline. The defense was conceding, to Javonte Williams and to Teddy. They weren't going to give anything to Jerry Jeudy. They weren't giving anything to Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant. These are all, frankly, fantasy useless players right now. Like, I would have more confidence starting some of these more dusty running backs than Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton. You probably have to start them, but I don't have a lot of confidence. And I think Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are probably the two players on this Denver Broncos offense that you can have the most fantasy confidence in moving forward, as long as Gordon, of course, is healthy.
Yeah, it's just such a low ceiling offense with all these fantasy guys. It's kind of why I didn't draft hardly any Noah Fant this year, because everyone was like, oh, you work a player profiler, you must love the 99th percentile athlete. And I was like, well, I don't even know where he is on the pecking order. He's number 3 or 4, maybe even number 5. It's going to be a fairly slow-paced offense. It's probably not going to be very good. It's not like Noah Fant has been commanding an outrageous amount of targets throughout his career anyway. And that was kind of my take with Sutton, with Jeudy, all these guys. I kind of thought, well, it doesn't really seem like Denver's motivated at all to really key in on anyone specifically, especially like just what they've done with their running back room is just so indicative of this season, where it's really just spread the ball around. They're trying to make this the most attractive landing spot for the 2022 quarterback, whoever it is. So I just really have, like you said, no interest in anyone. I think because the running back position's so shallow, you're starting Gordon, you're starting Javonte, but really, I mean, you probably have better, unless you're in a really deep league, you probably are not starting Sutton, Jeudy, Fant, Patrick.
None of them.
You know why their ceiling is capped? Because they're a mile high. That's why, Larky.
Gosh. All right. We'll finish up the running back position real quick here. I think it's pretty obvious. Tony Pollard's the best back in Dallas, but by how much? And is it worth investing in Tony Pollard right now? Or is he cracking your starting lineups in the running back 1 or running back 2 spots? And how are we going to view this Dallas backfield moving forward?
I had Tony Pollard last week as running back 20 in half PPR. He finished 18 on the week. I was higher than most. I think it was plus 4 ECR. But he looks to be the most explosive back here. He continues to make play after play, explosive play after explosive. It seems like every time he touches the ball, he's getting 4 to 5 yards a carry. To me, like watching tape, like Zeke just doesn't look right. Like that knee, you can tell has hindered him. He looks slower. He doesn't look as powerful. It just doesn't look like the same back to me on film as he had in years past when he had that explosiveness. Tony Pollard has the juice right now, and to me, I think is the most explosive back on this backfield.
Yeah, it's really difficult because if you look at the carries, the routes, I mean, everything is in favor of Zeke. And then watch the game. I'm not even a film guy, and you just look and it's like, well, Zeke's out there and he doesn't look healthy. It's clear that he's hobbled. And I think it's a really strange situation because we were talking before, like the Cardinals, no incentive to push Chase Edmonds. That's why they weren't rolling Kyler Murray out there. These weren't must-win games. The team is just too good. Dallas is so clearly going to make the playoffs. And you'd think it's actually just in their best interest to sit Ezekiel Elliott for 2 weeks. He looked really damn good at the start of the season. I mean, at the beginning of the season, it was like, wow, Ezekiel Elliott looks like year 1, year 2 Zeke. He is explosive. I was going to say he looks leaner, and it's not necessarily clear that Pollard's the more explosive back. And that you kind of saw like Zeke had those elite measurables coming into the NFL with his testing, and you kind of saw that. You don't see that anymore. And I don't quite know what's going to happen. It's just so strange that he will dominate not even just the carries, but the routes run. That this is the guy who's actually going out there for pass catching work when you have former college receiver Tony Pollard. I don't know what's going on. I think I just did my projections earlier for them, earlier this afternoon. I have Zeke and Pollard are pretty neck and neck. I think they're both they're around like 13 fantasy points, give or take each. I don't really know who has the edge. I think Zeke safer floor, Pollard higher ceiling.
Yep.
If I had to choose one, I'd probably start Pollard just because of that ceiling, where I think Pollard still has some type of floor, but it's been baffling. I mean, what was it? Was it 2 or 3 weeks ago where Pollard basically did absolutely nothing, even though it was clear Zeke was already banged up? So I just don't know what to make of it's irrational coaching at its finest right now.
It's $90 million for 6 years and you're stuck with that contract. That's the sticking point, I think. Jerry
It's
Jones
also
just
partly Zeke. You got to think about, like, he sees how explosive Pollard is. Like, I better not come off this field, right? You take a look at it and saying, hey, this kid is, going 60 yards and a touchdown every handful of plays. Like, I better get on the field and just do my best to secure my position. Like, you have to think some of that's in the back of his head with how well Pollard's been playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems to me like it's in Zeke's best interest, though, to get a little healthier. I think because of that contract, because of how good of a pass blocker he is, it's not like he's never going to see the field. And I mean, yeah, if you want a couple yards on the ground, you'd rather hand it to Zeke, who's just so much bigger than Pollard. You want to protect Pollard. There's no reason Tony Pollard should ever be getting those runs up the middle like he started to get the last few weeks. You really want him in space. So I think there is that role for Zeke no matter what happens moving forward with Pollard. And that's why if I'm Zeke, I'm sitting out a couple weeks, because also the last thing that you want if you're Ezekiel Elliott is to just flat out miss time, maybe miss the playoffs due to injury. So I understand. You look at Pollard and go, wow, this guy's he's playing a lot better than me. But it also seems like you'd think I was potentially playing better than him earlier in the season. I looked really explosive. I need to get back to that. So it just doesn't make sense.
All right, moving to wide receivers. Would you say it's safe for fantasy managers to drop Antonio Brown at this point?
No, I'm still a believer. He's going to be back for the fantasy playoffs, most likely. I think even if you're like, oh, I'm holding him for week 16, 17, I still think it's worth it. I believe he's number 5, number 6 in points per game in PPR. It's just such a good offense. And it's the same reason why I don't think you should drop Thielen yet. Because if Thielen even comes back for week 17 only, I mean, if you're in the championship, you want Adam Thielen if he's supposedly healthy. And I think this is kind of the time of the year where you can start to trim the fat on your bench. That running back stash that you had in case the starter got injured, the probability of that hitting is pretty low. The probability that if Antonio Brown returns, I think it's week 16 at the earliest, I believe, the probability that he's going to be very fantasy relevant and you're starting him, incredibly high. So I don't think anyone should drop him. So, like, for example, he's on my Scott Fishbowl roster. I am not dropping Antonio Brown.
Ooh, where are you ranked now?
I know that if I keep advancing in the tournament, then when he's back, I will want to start him.
Where do you rank Scott Fishbowl?
Oh, it's terrible. I made a Twitter thread earlier about kind of why you want to swing for upside and how almost all my picks ended up sucking, but I still made the playoffs. Here was the start of my team. It was Lamar, Tannehill, Akers, Kyle Pitts, Miles Sanders. There is no hit in my first 5 picks. Luckily, then I took Chase and Lamb. And then after that, I went Sermon, Curtis Samuel. So in my first 9 picks, I basically had 7 bad picks and then Chase and Lamb. It's been rough. Like, Fournette has saved me. I have Gronk. I'm hanging on by a thread. I'm squeaking into the playoffs. But I think people like Antonio Brown, that's my secret weapons. If I could sneak through a couple of these weeks, I have a few legitimate players that are just buried on the bench. I've got Sterling Shepard. He says hello. He's in the bunker, kind of waiting in case he ever returns. But no, you should definitely not drop Antonio Brown unless you're like, I absolutely can't afford to lose this week and he's taking up a roster spot.
Yeah, I agree. AB, you want to save for the playoff push. I as much as he is, sucked to hold for the last few weeks and then to be suspended. I agree with you, Josh. I think that his upside is just unprecedented. It's just too much upside to throw to somebody else in the championship or the playoffs. All right. What's going on with Terry McLaurin?
Yeah.
Oof. I
Shrugged my shoulders. They've been running a lot. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick before his injury.
No, Bradley, you got to do the what goes up, what must come down thing.
All right, I'll do the what goes up must come down mantra. Antonio Gibson, we've seen really emerge over the last few weeks, and having him at the centerpiece of this offense, I think, was the goal at the beginning of the year. Like, he may not have been the 3-down Christian McCaffrey type that everyone was hyping him up in the offseason to be, but he was injured for, a significant part of the early parts of the season. And we saw a dip, and he wasn't involved in the way that we had hoped. He just wasn't as dynamic. But now with the offense now being centered around Antonio Gibson, the running game, the Washington football team in control of the game and the game script, I think that they haven't needed to use Terry McLaurin. I haven't read any injuries about McLaurin. Maybe I missed something, but I don't think there's anything there. The opportunities there we'll see moving forward. Logan Thomas is probably out for the rest of the year with the non-ACL injury, but nevertheless, I think that it's going to continue to be Antonio Gibson. Maybe you'll see a couple flash plays from Terry, but I think he's back down to a wide receiver 2-ish play.
Yeah, this kind of happens a lot where a team that's doesn't have a whole lot of talent on either side of the ball, they're trying to squeak into the playoffs, and they often try and slow the game down. And that if you have Antonio Gibson, who's finally getting healthy, and then you have Taylor Heinicke, he's not one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL.
That's so kind of you to say, Josh.
He's also very mobile. There's just not, to begin with, there's not that many pass attempts a lot of these weeks to go around. On top of that, it's not a great quarterback. Curtis Samuel's back. His snap share will probably keep going up. I just think that Terry McLaurin's kind of stuck in kind of that wide receiver 2 purgatory, where when you look and you go, wow, he's probably going to project for within 1 or 2 fantasy points a game of 25, 30 other receivers. And I mean, you're still starting him, but I don't think there's the upside case with McLaurin where maybe he gets better quarterback play and he really breaks out this year. I think that's just totally gone. And that at this point, we're just stuck with who McLaurin's been the first couple of years of his career, where he's very good as a receiver in real life, not in the fantasy department.
Yeah, you look at Antonio Gibson's carries, 95 carries the past 4 weeks. When you're running the ball that much, you're gonna suffer in the passing game. It's the same kind of scenario we saw with Joe Mixon during Chase's downside the last few weeks. They were handing the ball off, 28, 30 times a game. Jamar Chase had suffered in the passing game. We're seeing the same kind of similarity here with Terry McLaurin. I know you got to go, Larky, but I want to give you one more question here before you head out. Who is the wide receiver to own in Detroit?
This is what I'm going out on, though.
I was about to say, Billy, that's such a parting gift is the Detroit Lions, the not winless Detroit Lions.
So prior to this week, I would have said, you just go with Josh Reynolds because he had over 600 receiving yards last year. He looked okay, and then he just sort of hopped into this role. But I think at this point, it's just one big game. But I think you just have to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is not a team playing for this year. They're trying to see what they have. They did invest, 4th round draft capital into him. I think you just have to roll with Amon-Ra. Also with someone like Reynolds, he's going to be really volatile. And because it's not a very good offense, you generally don't even want the super volatile receiver on a bad offense. It just seems like logically you'd rather, if you have a weak-armed quarterback in a bad offense, the guy that's running the really close to the line of scrimmage routes, especially in PPR leagues, you're going to want Amon-Ra. So I think last week I would have said Reynolds, but I would have said it's strange. You'd think Amon-Ra would be the one they're trying to get more looks for, develop the young receiver. I think it was encouraging what we saw last week. So I'm rolling with the sun god himself.
It's funny because last week on Mina Mansion, I told Matt, it is not Reynolds because you watch in film, you watch it. It was one blown play, 40-yard touchdown. You take out that touchdown and that one blown play, and he had three catches for like 30 yards. And, in terms of statistics, that day's a bad day. but you have that 40-yard touchdown, and now he's 70 yards and a touchdown. He's 13, PPR points, 14 PPR points. I can't do math that fast in my head. But you have, a drastic change of events had that touchdown been gone. And, you look at snap counts, and it's clearly Reynolds and St. Brown are the two favorites. Week 11, here we go, is when Reynolds joined. 43 snaps to St. Brown's 41s. Then he's 48 St. Brown week 12, 43 Reynolds, and then 69, 60. So they're both the two heavy favorites in the snap counts, but I think St. Brown seems to be doing more with them, at least more consistently. However, shower narrative, or as I guess it's more pro narrative, Reynolds does have that relationship.
Pros can shower together there, Billy.
Yeah. But he has that relationship with Goff, so there's chemistry there. So more likely for a big play, more likely to be looked at on certain downs, third downs in particular, right? I think that you can probably nod that way for Reynolds. I think it's close, but I agree with you, Larky. I'm going to go with St. Brown here just because of what I've been seeing with my eyes on film.
Look, you want the boom bust play. That's Josh Reynolds in this offense. You want the consistent high floor PPR. That's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown, his catchable target rate, number 2 in the NFL. His catch rate, number 7. His target accuracy, like Goff is getting him the ball accurately, number 9 overall in the NFL. But he's close to the line of scrimmage, yards per reception, yards per target, 87th, 100th. Like, this is a player who, is operating very close to the line of scrimmage. He's not getting downfield, but Josh Reynolds, they're willing to just let him run. And that's where these broken plays are more likely to happen. So while it's less likely, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is the safer, higher floor play in this Detroit Lions offense.
All right, Larky. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the time that you gave us, especially last minute. I literally messaged you like less than an hour before the podcast, and I just want to say thanks for jumping on and joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. Hopefully we can do this again at some point when I have a little bit more time to prepare. I can have a little more nuance rather than just being like, I don't know about McNichols. Is he coming back? I don't know.
That's the best.
All right, Larky.
We threw you off guard, got you at your best.
Yes.
Where can the people find you, Larky?
You can find me on Twitter at JLarkyTweets, and I will drop that coming out this week. PlayerProfiler.com will be a player prop strategy guide, because I know that many of you out there you like to dabble in player props, and if I had to guess, you are not profitable. Almost everyone is not. I was not profitable last year, and then vowed to crack the case. So I've done dozens of hours of research. I've made hundreds and hundreds of props and have finally figured out a winning formula where I'm very net positive this year. So going to be sharing pretty much everything that I've learned with the people. So hopefully no one takes my money, but that'll be coming out very shortly on playerprofiler.com. Free to read for everyone.
And you've got a TikTok account as well, right?
Yeah, so there's JLarky Tweets for Twitter, JLarky TikToks for TikTok. I recently cracked 200 followers on TikTok. Man, it is tough growth over there. I am not putting out your typical TikTok videos where, everyone these days on TikTok for our industry, it's like nodding your head, you've got rap music blasting, and then all of a sudden like text pops up and it's like Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 for the week, hot take. And then more nodding, and then it's like you're running back hot take. And I'm not making those videos. I understand those are the videos that crush. I'm trying to do it differently. Different is not good apparently on TikTok, but I am there. Please support me. I'm desperate.
Man, I just hats off to you for doing it. I was trying to, create and manage the TikTok page for Fantasy Data as well as the YouTube page. And it was just way too much. And we just started throwing up like the weekly ads for waivers. And I think we got it to like week 12 and I just gave up. I'm like, I don't have time for all this. I can't manage all this stuff at once. It's too much. And, but I've been watching your shirtless takes and, hats off to you, or shirts off to you, Larky, for going out there and doing
good one, Billy.
I will say that. So TikTok gets a lot of shit, and I think reasonably so. Like there's a lot about that platform that I don't like. I don't spend any time on that platform personally. I'm purely a creator. I'm not looking really at other TikToks, but One thing that I do think I've noticed is that there is kind of this crazy virality growth potential. So one thing that I noticed was I had like 170 followers at the time, and I got 1,400 views on a video.
Yeah.
And
It's
to people that are on
algorithm-based.
TikTok, that doesn't sound like much, like 1,400 views. But when I had 8 times as many views as followers. I have 15,000 followers on Twitter. If I get 10,000 Twitter views, which is 2/3 of my followership, I'm stoked. And I'm like, oh my God, 10,000 people on Twitter saw this. On TikTok, it was 8x. 8x 15,000. I would never get 120,000 video views on Twitter. So I think that ratio was kind of tantalizing, where I thought, you know what? I can understand why this is sort of what the selling point for putting in these hours that I am on TikTok is, that I do think it's kind of a unique algorithm for growth, which I like, because Twitter is just not very good at promoting, especially your video content. So I think there is that niche there for TikTok. I've seen it happen with myself. So I think it's possible. The growth is possible.
We posted some like bullshit video and it had like 1,400 views. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wouldn't even watch my own video. It was that bad. And we are hustling our asses off on Twitter, and we're like, yes, maybe might get 1,000, right? But it's, I'm just like, we're talking with Mike, and we're like, yeah, we just need to go to TikTok. I'm like, I just can't do it. I physically can't do it. Like mentally, I can't beat the barrier.
He's trying.
And
to
I'm not going up there with my
renegade.
shirt off. I'll scare people away. Like, it's, I don't got the Josh Larky bot. I got the dad bot over here. So, Larky's got that market captured already.
Mm-hmm.
All right, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks,
Have a good
Larky.
one.
All right, let's finish up some of these questions. We got a few more. Let's skip to tight ends. Bradley, are you concerned if you are a Kyle Pitts owner? I know in Dynasty, no. The answer is no in Dynasty. But season long, final weeks down the stretch, are you concerned as a Kyle Pitts owner?
I mean, real talk, he's having perhaps the greatest rookie tight end year of all time, and it's overshadowed by the fact that you drafted him in the 5th round, in the 4th
third
round.
and fourth in some places.
In some places, you're not getting return on your investment. But you're ridiculous if you were drafting him that early. You got to just be grateful for what you have. Kyle Pitts has been, as I said, he's putting up one of the best tight end performances. He's on pace for, some great statistics. I mean, I'll pull it up here in a second, but Calvin Ridley is nowhere to be seen, right? He's still on the PUP. I think Russell Gage is the only other player in this offense that I think is going to be,
Don't be smirch Olamide Zacchaeus.
You don't even know how to say his name. So for perspective,
I can't say a lot of names though.
I want you to this is Kyle Pitts. I have zero concerns about Kyle Pitts now or later. He's number 3 among all tight ends in air yards. He's number 1 in the air yard share, number 3 in average target distance, number 4 in deep targets, number 11 in red zone targets. I'm still not worried about that. 5 in hog rate, 14th in target rate, 7th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, 2nd in completed air yards, 6th in unrealized air yards. Matt Ryan just is not hitting him on some of these things, but that's okay. Though that regresses to the mean. He's 11th in fantasy points per game. I get it. It's not what you drafted him at, but you need to be happy that he's putting up for what you should have expected for him. He's putting up the 3rd best among all tight ends in yards per reception. He's 7th in yards per target, 8th in target quality. This is a player who's playing very well. All of his peripherals, all of the measurables, not just his profile, but all of the data suggest that he's having a phenomenal season. It's just that the Atlanta offense is bad.
And he's seeing double man coverage on almost every play. It's I forget the statistics, 60% of the time.
Yeah. So I'm not concerned about his production because you're going to expect his floor is low end tight end 1, I think. He's had some tight end 2 weeks, a bunch of those, but you're going to have boom, you're going to have bust weeks. His peripherals are all there. There's no deep concern for me for Kyle Pitts.
Okay. Gronkowski's been the number one tight end on the season in a point per game total. Should he be viewed as the number one tight end moving forward?
Until AB's back, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. You add another dynamic pass catcher in that offense, and it's going to be a lot of mouths to feed.
So as long as AB is out, tight end, Gronk should be a top 4 tight end safely.
Okay. Minshew drew the start last week with Hurts. Say that 3 times. Did Minshew do enough to warrant another start, or do you think they'll go back to Jalen Hurts?
Not on the Eagles, but he should be starting somewhere else in the NFL next year. Like, imagine Gardner Minshew throwing to Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, Chase Claypool. Like, we saw Minshew and DJ Chark light it up. And then I think that he's an underrated player. I think he deserves more than Teddy Bridgewater. He's willing to pass the ball down the field. He's accurate. I get it. It was against the Jets, but he's playing cold. And, I'm all for the Minshew Mania. Get me a t-shirt that says Minshew Mania, Billy, for Christmas. Cause I am all in on I hope that he signs somewhere this off season. Someone takes a flyer on him.
I just love his quotes. Like, he always has, some crazy quote, like with his off season about he hasn't taken a shit for weeks because number 2 isn't an option for him.
I love it. And
then there was another one this week about something about Da Vinci not being able to paint and only having one ear, and I can't hear you. That's what
I think that was Van Gogh, but
same thing. You know what I'm saying? I was not a great student, Bradley. So I played sports,
but I don't think he plays again for Philly unless Jalen Hurts is actually hurt again. Yeah. But this has to give the Philadelphia Eagles some confidence that they have a backup. They have a capable player who can get the ball to Dallas Goedert, your number 1 receiving option. So yes, I think that this instills confidence that they have a backup quarterback, and that if he's out, that he can step into a starter role and there's not a significant downgrade of the offense.
Okay, enough about quarterbacks. No one cares about quarterbacks. Playoffs are starting this week for many
let's talk about tight ends. Taysom Hill.
Real quick, hold up. No, this is more important. We're nearing the end of our show.
Okay.
Playoffs start for many people this coming week, if it hasn't already for them. And there's chaos around the league right now. I mean, week 14 bye is here now. It's the latest bye we've seen in NFL history. I mentioned that earlier. We have Indy on a bye. The Pats are on a bye. Miami's on a bye. AB suspended. Cook still hurt. Mitchell's in concussion protocol. Keenan Allen's on COVID. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? Joe Mixon has a hurt neck. Like, I could sit here in the next 15, 20 minutes and just list off, injuries that are going to be affecting playoffs or buys. But who are you looking at picking up off the waiver wire this week to potentially start for your team when it matters most? Give me 3 names that you're looking to add.
3 wide receivers. Fate of the world. Need the death glare is down. Give me Iguodala. No. No, give me Laquan Treadwell of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Give me KJ Osborne of the Minnesota Vikings.
I like the Osborne pick.
And give me the boom plays of Josh Reynolds. I know we just bashed him a lot, but give me some boom plays of
Don't buy.
I know. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably not available on your waiver wire. So Josh Reynolds.
Okay. I love the I love a couple of them. I do. I like
2 of them.
I like KJ Osborne. Look what. So Treadwell's been actually pretty not productive, but he's been getting a lot of target share, a lot of snaps the last few weeks. Very sneaky, right? So I think
is this the 6th-year breakout for Laquan, former first-round pick Laquan Treadwell?
It's like Corey Davis 2.0, right?
That's
like
we.
My 3 this week are Ricky Seals. Okay, we have Logan Thomas done pretty much for the year. He's guys out.
Seals has a hip injury though, so are you trusting Bates as the 3rd string tight end now?
So that's what I was going to say. If Seals is not active this week, where I'm going to be leaning Bates and be adding Bates, especially in tight end premium leagues. Crowder I'm going to be looking at for the Jets this week. He's going to be on a lot of waivers, up and down weeks. Hasn't been that good of a fantasy asset this year to date. Has had his moments, but Corey Davis is out for the year with his groin surgery. So I would be looking at Crowder if I'm in desperation flex mode. And then lastly, JaMychal Hasty. And I look at my Niners, and again, here we are, injury riddled at the running back position.
Who'da
Elijah
thunk,
Mitchell.
Billy?
Nobody, right? I keep saying Dustin Perry needs to be fired. Strength and conditioning coach just happens every year. Like, when are we going to realize? But we have JaMychal Hasty, who's probably going to see a 90% snap share, if not more. I mean, yes, we're probably going to see some Kyle Juszczyk because he was playing over Sermon even before Sermon went to IR. But Sermon's IR now. You have Wilson, whose surgically repaired knee just flared up and swelled. So who does that leave? It leaves you with JaMychal Hasty and only JaMychal Hasty.
Well, Eli Mitchell with the concussion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Mitchell re-entered concussion protocol yesterday, which is never a good sign. He re-entered the game on Sunday, came back to concussion protocol on Sunday. So I as of right now, I'm assuming Mitchell is out. That's never a good sign. So Hasty's going to see a bulk of these carries, and the Niners worked out a lot of running backs today. So I look at that and I say JaMychal Hasty is going to be, given the lion's share of these carries.
Well, and we've seen Hasty have 3 games so far this year with at least 4 targets. So he could be used in a pass catching capability or pass catching role. I don't know if Debo's going to be back. Probably not, but Shanahan's played that close to the vest. If Debo's out there, I think he gets, some run at running back as well. So Kyle Juszczyk, Debo Samuel, JaMychal Hasty, and whoever the 49ers sign off the street might be filling your running back room here, Billy.
All right, last piece before we call it a night. Give me 2 defensive streaming options for the bye fill-ins, because everyone probably had New England, everybody had Indy. Those are top tier defenses. So give me 2 streaming options for these championship rosters that are going to be looking to fill in for these 2 top tier defenses.
Well, I'm not gonna. You're not gonna like at least one of these. Well, probably both of these. But Seattle against Houston. Seattle has at least a sack and either a fumble or interception every game. Davis Mills is starting. Tyrod Taylor's probably going to be out with a hyperextended wrist. So fire up your Seattle defenses. And the second is the Lions take on the Denver Broncos. And the Lions have allowed fewer than 28 points in all but 3 games since week 2. So, yes, they've not been winning a lot, but they've been
sneaky good on defense.
They've been playing low score games, been playing real tough defense. Campbell has had them play, I think, above where their talent level is on defense.
Because they're biting kneecaps, Bradley.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do. And Denver has proven time and again that they're just not a high upside offense. And we were talking earlier about whether Melvin Gordon's going to be back or not. Javonte Williams will probably eat in this game, but look, you can't have confidence firing up Judy or Fant or Sutton or Tim Patrick or whoever else is playing for Broncos. Teddy Bridgewater just did not look good against the Chiefs. So Seattle and Detroit are my 2 DST streamers.
My 2 are Tennessee, who gets Jacksonville. Green Bay gets Chicago. Chicago's just been pitiful. Green Bay's had, a pretty damn good defense this year. I know you're the resident Green Bay fan, Bradley, but I think that their defense has been severely underrated this year. They really stepped up, especially when Jerry Alexander was out those few weeks. Like, the defense didn't really skip a beat, quite frankly, which surprised me. So they get the pitiful Bears this week. I saw a tweet today and it was like Chicago was averaging like 100 and something passing yards per game, and the 1947 Bears were averaging more passing yards per game. So essentially, Nagy's Chicago Bears can't outplay a 1947 team. I forgot who tweeted it. I'd like to give him credit, but it was a pretty good tweet.
It's so gross, but go Pack, go.
Yeah. So those are my 2 streaming defenses. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Week 14 discussion. We'll be back here Friday night for our rankings podcast. I finished 13th this week. Bradley finished inside. What was it? Number
59.
59. So there we go. 2 of the top 60 analysts and rankings for the week here in the industry.
Let's go.
Both had a pretty good week. I finished number 1 in quarterbacks. Hang my hat on that one this week.
I was top 40 to 60 in almost everything. So
Yeah, a good week for both of us. So make sure to tune in on Friday for our rankings podcast. We're going to be going through all of our top 10 positional rankings and taking any start-sit questions in regards to those positions live. Thanks for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you on Friday, and have a good night and good luck in your playoff matchups heading into the weekend.